Fire Emblem and remakes. Two things that are actually more intrinsically linked than one might think. FE3 was a remake of the first game, but with an entire sequel tacked on. 11 and 12 were a remake of the first one, again, and then 12 was a remake of the sequel. Then finally, 15 was a remake of the second, Gaiden. Recently, everyone has been clamoring for a remake of the fourth game, Genealogy of the Holy War, and maybe including its midquel, Thracia 776, and I can definitely see why. The games have a lot of issues that could be fixed, like the absurd imbalance between the quality of mounted units and non-mounted, secrets being too frickin' hidden, and some mechanics like the romance not being explained like at all. And while I do see why this remake is desired, I would personally rather see a combined remake of the 9th and 10th game, Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. Why? Well, for starters, I'd rather not spend $200 on a physical copy, and there are several issues I would kill to see fixed, and since I've already committed the murders, I may as well get the remake that I want. Now I understand that technically, Genealogy and Thracia deserve it way more since they're not available in English, and as stated above, there are several issues. But, counterpoint, I can have opinions. And while a lot of people have talked about a 4/5 remake, I want to break the mold and discuss a 9/10 remake. So here's the 9 changes I'd want to see in a combined remake, in no particular order. Feel free to discuss this in the comments and flame me for my bad opinions.
Number 1. Graphical updates, balances, and inherent fixes.
The most basic of changes when it comes to remakes. The Telly saga already has a lot of charm. The battle models are really detailed, the environments look great, and I really love the weapon designs. But the map sprites can look kinda bad. Like, limbs not being attached to their body type of bad. On top of that, some animations are really slow and can make a single combat encounter take like almost a minute. Buffing that stuff out and making it clean and fast would be greatly appreciated. And as for balances, Radiant Dawn in particular has some major issues. There is no reason my near promoted archer with 15 speed should be unable to double fighters, and especially not the enemy knights. Conversely, I feel the reason the stats are so inflated was because of how pathetic they were in Path of Radiance. While it does feel great, it is kind of wacky how my typically slow-ish Wyvern Rider can be able to double Myrmidons. Balancing the game can make things more enjoyable and challenging. Finally, there are some things caused by glitches or poor translation that should just be fixed inherently. In Radiant Dawn, every magic weapon uses strength instead of magic, meaning they're not magic weapons, they're just swords you can throw the blade at someone before retrieving them. The difficulties were incorrectly labeled in the English version, where normal, hard, and maniac were instead labeled as easy, normal, and hard. Ike starts Path of Radiance with 4 iron swords in his inventory if you skip some cutscenes, and Moarim accidentally has missed description, as well as some skills not being accurate based on their description, like Wild Heart not reducing the amount of XP you gain, or Resolve not increasing your strength. So, if that could be fixed, that'd be great. One final thing is I think some skills could use some tinkering. The capacity one has for skills is extremely low, to the point that tier 1 units cannot use a majority of the skills you'd want, like Paragon to double their XP gain, and Renewal to recover HP passively. Making it so skills cost less or characters have more capacity would be extremely appreciated, as well as having the ability to get scrolls when you unequip skills in Path of Radiance, like you can in Radiant Dawn.
Number 2, consistency.
Some things aren't super cohesive between the two games, and patching them up could improve them greatly. Beast units work completely differently. In Path of Radiance, every beast gains 4 points towards transforming. Transforming at 20, then the meter slowly goes down until it hits 0, and then they revert. With the only thing that changes between beasts is how many transformation points they gain at the start of a turn, and their starting value. Meanwhile, in Radiant Dawn, every beast starts at 0, each beast grows and loses points differently, and once they hit 30, they gain the ability to transform, and double the majority of their stats. Picking one mechanic and having it work across both games would be nice. On top of that, some characters demote when they reappear. Ilyana and Jill will always reappear as tier 1 classes, even if you promoted them, while Mist loses her horse, something that is very missed until she promotes. The last bit of consistency is with the bonus XP system. Completing certain objectives, such as releasing prisoners or completing chapters fast, rewards you with XP you can use to top off your units or let some who have fallen behind catch up. In Path of Radiance, bonus XP works just as it normally does. XP is XP. In Radiant Dawn, instead of becoming face to face with RNGesus, you're always guaranteed 3 stat points. That means it's best saved for once you've capped 1 or more stats, so that way those stats won't increase, and something they need more, like a Thief's Strength or Ilyana's Speed, will be more likely to. I think making it more like Radiant Dawn's would be far better. The final bit of consistency I want is the support system. In Path of Radiance, characters had support chats where, after being deployed to the same chapter enough times, they'll engage in C, B, and A supports, increasing their bonds, teaching us more about their personality, and boosting their stats in combat. In Radiant Dawn, there are none. Instead, you can assign any one character to another if they fight near each other long enough. And sure, they get stat buffs like in Path of Radiance, but instead of full-length chats, they have a handful of instigations depending on who they are talking to, and 1 response. That's it. Generic lines. Not even the main lord and her literal love interest have unique lines. And the lesbian flirts with both guys and gals the exact same way. Please just add in actual supports. You can even keep this bond system, but I want to learn more about Eren. I want to see how Titania has changed since the original war, and the lack of chats just mean the old characters don't feel right, and the new ones are so bland and forgettable. If you've played the game, name a single thing about Laura except that she's a cleric. Go ahead. Try. Exactly. Supports would be nothing but a boon to this game. One last bit of consistency I'd like to see is more connectivity with Radiant Dawn, such as characters like Kai'Sa and Lyre seeing Mordecai and Leth off from Gallia, and Meg being mentioned outside of Braum's A support with Zehark. I really enjoy it in games when you meet a character, then later, either in the same game or a different one, where they're now playable and join your party. Love that stuff. 3. A specific type of avatar. Wait. Before you click off this video, let me explain. I think that the option for an avatar would be perfect. And if you think that it can't be done, just look at the first game with an avatar, Blazing Blade. Sure, you can miss out on some buffs to some units hit, avoid, and dodge, but you can turn him off completely if you'd like. I think something similar can work here. Here is my idea. You build your OC, then start the game. The prologue, Chapter 1 and 2 happen normally, but then, during Chapter 3, when the town is besieged by pirates, Shinan notices a certain insert class here fighting amongst the pirates. It's you! From then on, you're treated like any other unit in the game. The narrative doesn't shift or revolve around you, you're just a pretty cool dude. The only real difference between you and any other unit is you can support with every character in the game, and your class is completely up to you. So in one playthrough, you can be a swift Myrmidon, or a hardy knight, or a mystic cleric. Why did you try soloing the pirates, idiot? I do think that the player should just be a normal Beyork and not a branded. Also, yes, you have the option to be a Laguz, although you couldn't pick the exclusive ones like Dragon and Heron, and it would take a bit longer for you to show up. Obviously, this would add 1 deployment slot to each map, which I could see some people do just to have more units they actually want, but hey, choices matter. Plus, when transitioning to Radiant Dawn, you can pick which country you went to after the Mad King's War, or it may be determined by who you supported. But once everything is said and done, you'll join the army of wherever you went. Then, at specific points, you'll be asked whether you'd stay with your current army or leave elsewhere. For instance, at the end of Part 1, Micaiah will ask if you'd like to stay with her in the Dawn Brigade, but if you say no, you can either follow Ilyana to the Grail Mercenaries, or head off on your own, and stumble into Alencia's company. Best part of all this? You can toggle them off. So if you want to have an OC you can self-insert as so you can marry your in-game waifu, sure. But, just as easily, you can choose to throw your OC in the trash for the characters you actually care about. I think if handled like this, everyone would be happy, as fans of the avatars can have their cake, while purists can remove it to not have to deal with cringe, terrible avatars. Best of both worlds. Number 4. Bonus missions. A mechanic not well utilized in the original game is transfer bonuses. In the original game, if you promoted a unit then capped their stats, they get a minor bonus to their stats in the next game, as well as a minor bonus to their weapon XP on their weapon ranks, and if they had an A support with a unit at the end of the game, they'll get a bond in Radiant Dawn that grants a minor buff to their crit and dodge. Minor problem. This is a little difficult to do for some characters based on join time and deployment slots. I can usually get an A rank with a lot of my favorites, but even I have my limits. I can only usually get 4 or so characters to max out stats and hit level 20 promoted. So here's what we add. A local menu. This menu will allow you to purchase local delicacies, such as olivey grass from Gallia to increase the transformation gauge, or powerful staffs and magic in Ben Yang. However, these prices are steep. But maybe if you want to get some extra cash and maybe even a discount, complete some jobs. Maybe Conagus wants you to rescue some captive Lagoos from the edge of Gallia, and the more you rescue, the more he appreciates you and rewards you. These will give you extra items, cash, and of course, experience. I do think that maybe on harder difficulties there could be more quests, but doing some quests changes relationships. Maybe the Bengyang merchants hear that you are really friendly to those filthy subhumans, so hike up their prices, and maybe even lock some quests behind a certain level of relations. If this game does add new units, I do think it's important to make sure not to lock these units behind relation quests. Otherwise, players may have to play antithetical to their normal actions, like not doing the early game Gallia quest just so they can recruit a unit on their first visit to Crimea. This mechanic can reappear in the sequel, but repainted, such as Makaya doing rebel stuff to bolster faith in the Dawn Brigade's resistance to the Bengyang occupational force, or Alencia sending Joffrey and co on official missions. This new system will make achieving weapon ranks or level 20 far easier, and thus something that players can actually make use of outside of characters like Ike or Mist. Number 5. Relationships. I want relationships to mean something. And I don't just mean siblings like the green-haired trio. For starters, I want Ike and Mist to boost each other, not only for 27-2, but also to reward players who bring this child cursed with bad stats to a battlefield. The main thing I want won't even come into play until Radiant Dawn. But here's my idea. Jill and Har have supports in both Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. But let's say Jill and Har reached A support in Path of Radiance. Neat. Good for them. They're the best of friends. Once you reach Radiant Dawn, instead of their normal C-A Radiant Dawn chats, they have different ones, building off how changed since then and the topics they've brought up. And there's an S support option for those who want to marry off their units. Plus, for once in the series, there can be a decent selection of gay or lesbian S supports, since there's no need to stay straight and create kids like in Awakening and Fates. And Radiant Dawn honestly has some okay representation, at least for a game from 2007. But enough about tying the knot, because building relationships isn't about wiving and husbandoing, it's about the unbreakable bonds of steel that you forge through hardships. Perhaps Braum really took a shine to Zehark, so he took up the sword in his downtime, so Braum starts with a C rank in swords rather than an E. Maybe Mia realized how cool magic swords were from Ilyana, so she studied a bit, and starts Radiant Dawn with +3 base magic and a wind sword. Or Ike, chilling with Alencia, made him realize he needs to be a better leader, and so starts Radiant Dawn with an additional leadership star. What I'm saying is that I want this to feel like my own handcrafted army by the endgame, forged through endless hardships, and having learned and grown thanks to each other, creating the best versions of themselves they can be. Seriously, I can spit out idea after idea for this, but I'll end it now so we can move on to other topics. Number 6. Base the game off the North American version. So to be honest, Radiant Dawn is a pretty divisive game. Some people love it, some people hate it, and some people are split down the middle. Here's the thing though, that's the Western perspective of it. Over in Japan, the area where the game was originally released, the game is hated. Essentially, once the game launched and got pretty negative reviews, they kinda took the 7 remaining months until the North American release to make gameplay changes and differences. For starters, you can save mid-battle on easy and normal mode to act as a safety net in case you run into a terrible patch of bad luck. Edward and Leonardo were also leveled up and given better stats to make it so they are more reliable at the start, instead of needing even more time to get somewhere decent. Wrath and Resolve were changed, making it so the thresholds needed to activate them were increased from 20% to both, to 30% and 50%, as well as making it so they always activate, instead of being a skill or strength percent chance. More buffs to the Dawn Brigade, like the personal weapons they get in 3-3, Kaudabalg, Tarvas, and Ludasnok, which were not in the original. Most notably, there was a major change to how classes work. In 9 and 10, when you hit level 20, if you level up again, you'll promote classes, from Tier 1 into Tier 2, then Tier 2 into Tier 3. There are a few exceptions, mostly being the protagonist and Laguz, but here's an important distinction. In the Japanese version, once you hit level 20 in a Tier 2 class, you cannot gain any more experience. The only way to promote was to use one of the rare Master Crown items. And sure, there are more of them in the Japanese version, a total of 13. That is not enough, and sure, you can only bring 12 characters into the endgame chapters, some of the required characters already being Tier 3. What about the entirety of Part 4, or the later chapters of Part 3? This really sucks for Mist, a character who can only promote using an item you get in 4-Prologue, so not even Master Crowns will work on her. So using a level up strat is the only way to promote her early. That really sucks, and because of that, I think it would be better to base the game off the original English version, so that this game can have the best chance of being regarded highly. Number 7. The Braum Rant. I have some choice words about the game design for Braum. In Path of Radiance, Braum joins you as a Lance Knight before promoting to General and gaining swords. But when he reappears as a General in Radiant Dawn, he's strangely an Axe General, with a side proficiency in swords, unable to wield the weapon he started with in Path of Radiance. And according to everything I've been able to find, whatever Lance experience he's gained is wasted. It's not translated to Axe XP, and he starts with D rank lances once he promotes into Marshal. So either making him start as a Lance General in Radiant Dawn, or if you really want him to be an Axe General, making the Lance XP he gained transfer over to Axe XP, or even Lance XP once he promotes to Radiant Dawn. I don't know, man, just make it so our efforts aren't wasted. Number 8. Hidden Treasures. I don't know where else to put this, but have you ever been playing Radiant Dawn and just randomly found an item, like a coin or an arm scroll? That was because of a hidden mechanic called Hidden Treasures. Much like the ones found in the desert sands of other games, there are treasures hidden throughout the game. It's, kind of annoying. Honestly, just throw down a glowing title to show where the item is, and a line where a character either says, "Oh, what's this?" or "Is something here?" if they fail the luck check. Or just remove the check altogether. Number 9. New Game Plus. Now when it comes to New Game Plus, there are some points of contention depending on which game you play. In Path of Radiance, once beating the game, you can get equipment that increases your growths by a minor amount. But in Radiant Dawn, you can get 2 units you don't normally. Peleus and Major Spoiler! On top of that, there are some conversations you can only see once you do things like having Soren fight Micaiah, recruit Peleus, then have Soren fight Peleus, and you get a single conversation. Honestly, I much prefer Path of Radiance New Game Plus, but I think that it can be made better through 2 changes. Keep and expand on the equipment system, and make it work for both games. Many of the bans were pretty useless, like +5 to your luck and skill growth. So making it so they actually do something useful, like increasing stat points gained by equipping them, or make it so they get useful buffs. Like, maybe have an actual stat increase as well as a growth change, like how the Knight's Crest grants +3 defense and resistance, while also giving a 30% speed growth. Maybe not as much as that, but like, maybe have the Myrmidon band increase your speed and skill by 1, and the Knight's band increase your defense by 2. Another aspect of New Game Plus I think should be added are some character recruitments. I know a lot of people want to recruit Petrine because she's a fiery goth mommy, and I want to give weapons to my merchants. I think the stuff should be reserved for a New Game Plus, so as to let the original story stand alone. Giving player options should be the game's main priority, and this would be the perfect way to do so. Don't want to change the story? Either don't play New Game Plus, or even easier, don't recruit them. I think it would be silly. And I love silly. As for what else New Game Plus could add, there isn't a whole lot that a lot of other games do. I don't think letting characters keep inherited skills would work, since unlike 3 Houses, most characters can't even equip their mastery skill until they hit tier 3, let alone all the different ones you may have given them over the course of the game. If it was genealogy, I'd say you could give the player items that can give people holy blood, but there's no real system like that in this game. I don't know, maybe unlock certain skills and weapons so anyone can wield Thani, or allow people to remove the shove skill for more capacity, or anyone can learn sacrifice. That'd be funny. So, bada bing bada boom, that's my idea for Fire Emblem Echoes Flames of Tellius. Were they good? Were they worthwhile? Probably not. Feel free to discuss your ideas in the comments, and I'll be down there responding to any criticism with bans. Thanks for watching, do all of the YouTuber shenanigans, and I'll see you nerds later.